Hey, babe. Why do you think the Inflation Reduction Act is stupid?
Because I was cussing it out yesterday on TV.
Yeah.
On that, it's because the Inflation Reduction Act is an oxymoron because it doesn't reduce inflation. And they're all talking about it, saying it's the Inflation Reduction Act. So, okay, maybe I should. Do you know how inflation works? You know
No.
why we're in inflation right now?
No.
Okay. Okay. So, inflation, it comes from, to explain it, you have to understand the supply and demand curve. Okay? This is quantity of goods, It's an economic term, it's stuff.
Okay.
Okay? And then this is the price. Right? Okay. So there are two curves usually. There's a demand curve, okay? Because inflation basically is a loss of the purchasing power of your money.
Okay.
All right? So an example of that is, remember I told you I went to McDonald's the other day and I bought a freaking Egg McMuffin and it was more than $5.
Crazy.
Since when did a fucking Egg McMuffin cost more than $5? Because I always went there with a $5 bill and I got change. And this time wasn't enough. Like, what the hell, all right? So, inflation is actually the loss of your purchasing power. My $5 couldn't buy that Egg McMuffin anymore. I had to cough up more money, right? So that's demand, okay? So this is demand. The demand curve, okay? Demand goes down as prices, demand is less for a quantity of a good as the prices are expensive, right? Does this make sense?
Yeah.
You don't see many Ferraris out there. You see a bunch of Chevys, whatever, right? Because it's cheaper. So that's demand, right? Then you have a supply curve, right? Suppliers always want to make more of something that they can get a higher price for. That's why it goes this way, right? And this is the price right here. This is where the price is in the marketplace. So this is like the price of the Egg McMuffin, right? Now, what happened during COVID, right? Well, let me take a step back. Inflation is caused by two things. A supply shock,
Okay.
a supply issue, this curve affects this curve, or a demand issue that affects this curve. Inflation is usually caused by, on the supply side, it's caused by a supply shock,
Okay.
right? And what happened during COVID? All the factories all over the world were shut down, right? Everything was shut down. Everybody had to stay at home, right? So what happens to supply? You can't go to the factory and make it anymore.
Right.
You have a supply shock, right? So that's a supply shock. So what happens in a supply shock when your demand stays the same, right? Your original supply was here, right? This is demand. And when the supply shock, the supply moves this way. The supply curve moves this way. So originally your price was here, right? Price one, the original price. Now look at the price, right? Now look at the price. It went up because there's less supply. So you got to pay more to get something, right? So that's what happened during COVID, right? So that's what caused, one of the causes of inflation, right? Now, what happened also during COVID? You get PPP, you get all sorts of, you got,
Stimulus checks.
stimulus checks, all that. So what's and what was the government doing? What was the central bank doing? Zero interest rates, right? Because they thought we were in a recession, everyone can't work. So they basically, the interest rates in the economy, the Fed funds rate was basically zero.
Right.
Right? I mean, I don't want to get into that, but it was zero cost of money, right? They pumped so much money in the economy. Now, during COVID, no one could spend it. So what happened during COVID? This country had the largest savings rate, one of the largest savings rate in history, because everybody was home, right? And watching TV, whatever, but not going out and spending it. You couldn't travel, you couldn't go to restaurants, you couldn't go to bars, you couldn't do anything.
Right.
So what do? Everyone stashed their money. So in 2021, so this supply shock happened right at COVID. This happened like 2020, right? Now in 2021, okay, remember, the supply curve already went up here. This is the original one here, right? And this is the demand curve, the normal demand curve, right? Like here, right? So this was the original price. The price already went up here, right? This is the higher price. Now after COVID ended, everyone just freaking went out. What did we do? Freaking try to go out and eat all the time, travel everywhere.
Yeah.
So what happened to all the money? The money was being spent into the economy, right? So you flood so what happened to demand, right?
Demand went up.
Yeah, your demand went up, right? So when you have your demand going up, right? Look how it happens when your demand goes up here. Look at the price here. So this was the original price 0. This was after the supply shock, and now look at this price. It's the highest. So that's what caused inflation. We had a supply shock, we had too much money in the economy, it drove the prices up. So the Federal Reserve right now, or the government, aka whatever, is trying to raise rates to reduce what? They are just trying to reduce this demand. See this demand, they're trying to bring it back down here.
Less spending in the market.
Yeah, because supply is already recovering on its own. Factories are open, but the bigger problem with supply is like one of the big, like you can see in the cars, right? How come we still have, cars are expensive, we still have shortages, right? Because you had this pent up demand, everybody needed it, they couldn't make it, and it takes time for factories, for chip makers. When they sent everybody home during COVID and you shut down a production line, you don't just turn it back on again like that. You can, once you shut something down, it takes a while to bring it back. So the hypothesis is increasing interest rates brings down the demand, brings the price back down here, and slowly the supply will come back down because the manufacturers, the producers in the economy in the world will start bringing the supply back to meet the demand.
Right.
Right, but that's not happened yet. We're still stuck up here right now. Right, does that make sense?
Yeah, too much spending in the marketplace, basically.
And no supply.
And no supply.
Double whammy. Okay, you have things like in the 70s, you have oil shocks, right? All of a sudden, there's no oil left. But that doesn't change the demand. The problem was we had so much more demand by the government pumping money and easy money into the economy during COVID, while the supply was being shocked. So as you come out of it, there's so much money, it drove the prices even higher. And that's what we're going. And that's why the Fed back then was saying, oh no, it's transitory. That word transitory that they're saying, they're just saying that, oh, there's a supply shock, things will come back down. But the problem was, no, that's not true. There's way too much excess money in the economy right now. And I don't want to complicate things, but their jobs are affected. The job market affects the inflation, but that's a little bit complicated. The main reason why we are right now is a supply shock and too much demand. That's it.
And so the bill that they passed,
the Inflation Reduction Act doesn't reduce inflation. You can read every study out there, right? So they're trying to bring in more. I agree with the Inflation Reduction Act, don't get me wrong. One of the key things about it that they did, right? They increased taxes on corporations. Yeah, completely agree with that. They should tax more corporations, right? They're reducing prescription drug prices. They're trying to, and they're allowing like Medicare to negotiate drug prices, which is fair. It's price controls. I don't know whether I agree with price controls in the economy, but fair enough. They're doing good things with it, but it doesn't reduce inflation because it's offset it. You're bringing in more money into the treasury by taxing more, but you're spending it all. And there's a very, very small amount that is the net, that it's net more revenue through the treasury, through higher taxes than spending. But that amount, the argument is it's going to reduce our deficit, and reduction of the federal deficit is going to help inflation, right? That's true. You read economics, it's true, technically. But they're reducing the deficit by 200 billion over 10 years, 200 or 300 billion over 10 years, right? What is our federal budget deficit? In the trillions. So it's not going to move the needle. It's not going to, really, it doesn't really reduce inflation. Not in the short term. It's not going to help anyone in the economy right now. But they call it that. Why? Because it's a good thing to call it. So everybody thinks it's a good thing. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Right.
Thanks.